Welcome to Buckets, coming to you from, well, San Diego, which I've been just quoting Anchorman constantly. Today's show is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. So excited to have DraftKings on as a sponsor of Buckets this season. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined by Bryan Fonseca and Brandon Kravitz for this, a look at the Southeast Division this year in the NBA. I want to talk some NBA futures based off of the Southeast Division. Couldn't think of anybody better to talk about it with, because I got Bryan Fonseca with me from the New York Post. Does shows after next games, live streams, does all sorts of great stuff. Check out Bryan's YouTube page. Just search Bryan Fonseca at YouTube. Go subscribe and sign up for his stuff. He does great, cool shows about combat sports and WNBA and all sorts of things. So go check out and support Bryan. Also joined by Brandon Kravitz, the new host of the new favorites, rocking the Action Network gear here at youtube.com/the Action Network. Brandon is also the pre and post game radio host for the Orlando Magic. You can catch him every day on Orlando radio as well. Want to talk about a number of things. Did I get that right, Kravitz?
You nailed it. We're
it.
actually streaming across the state of Florida now. You know, humble brag, but
ooh, look at
we're moving up. We're moving up in the world. So is the Southeast Division, by the way. So it's the perfect time to talk about it.
It's true. So we're going to talk about the Southeast Division today on the show. Bryan Fonseca, long known as a Heat sympathizer, is how I've described him, going back to the 2023 run when he was betting Heat money line every single game, as they just robbed us of money with that run that they were on. So Brandon understands the Magic really well, and Bryan, I think, understands the Heat very well. And
also,
I think there's a lot of other things to kind of get to and talk about in this division today as well. So we won't do like a complete deep dive on all these teams, but we're going to hit some of the highlights. And I want to start here with this question. You know, Brandon, the Magic have so much expectation on this season because the addition of Desmond Bane. I've talked about this being the bigger thing with them for me is actually that they, Bane's a bigger deal, but a quiet thing is that they added God Shamgod as a new coach on the assistant coaching staff. It seems they have revamped their offense in line with trying to generate a better look at the offense. So, I want to ask you, how much better do you think that this offense can be? Because it was so bad last year. That's the big question for me on this division, and whether or not they run away with it is, can you really overhaul the offense enough in a season to pull them from how bad they were to a good enough level for them to be an elite team in the NBA this season?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is yes. And part of it starts with self-awareness, just knowing where your shortcomings are and then how to fix those problems. I wasn't sure that the Magic had that, because how many opportunities have they had now, going back to last offseason where they added Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and thought that that would fix all of their problems, then to the trade deadline where we all thought they were going to make this big splash and they did nothing. I thought that the front office was looking at their core going, hey, these guys will eventually develop. I mean, I believe there were internal conversations with the team where they said as much to each other that, hey, we're good enough to get us where we need to go. So I was concerned going into the offseason that they weren't going to be, I think they're really good at what they do. I just think every management team has blind spots, and theirs seems to be the 3-point line, but they addressed it, and they addressed it in three big different ways. You mentioned, Desmond Bane is obviously the biggest. Tyus Jones is an incredibly efficient 3-point shooter. Bringing him off of the bench is going to help a lot. And then Shamgod, I had a chance to interview him in the offseason. This individual, not short on confidence, by the way, but he's already been working with these guys individually. And I think just bringing it, they had to change things in terms of the way they're approaching the players that are currently on the team. And then they had to change some of the actual bodies on the roster and guys that can just simply snipe. And this is where I will give them some credit on the internal stuff, is that after the All-Star break, they weren't as awful as they were season long or into the playoffs. They were 21st in 3-point shooting post All-Star break, They shot 35% from three. With how good this team is defensively and the way that Paolo and Franz can break down a defense, 35% health and continuing to play defense the way that they were is probably good enough for a deep run as it is. And then you add the new bodies and the new coaching to the mix. It's enough to make me feel like this team can push to a Final Four this season.
Final Four, I think, is that's a really good goal. Like, I think that's honestly like a really great goal for them, because I don't know if they're going to be able to get themselves to a spot where I think that they're, I've looked at a lot of the thresholds for what you have to be often in this league in order to be like a championship contender. I've run a lot of numbers on that, and they were 27th overall in offense last season. And you mentioned like the post All-Star numbers, they got better, and that's good. But it's also like, if we look at the large sample, I mean, this team could not shoot, to the point where like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who has been a very reliable shooter since about year 4 of his career, he bottomed out, and it was just like no one could shoot. And I do think those things are systemic. Like, I think there's a systemic level of the offense that has to be changed, and they're working to kind of shift that. You mentioned kind of the defense, and that's one of the interesting things here. If you adjust the amount of effort that you're giving defensively, offense becomes easier, but the sacrifice is your defense. And the Cavs are a great example of this last year, where it's like the Cavs weren't a bad defense last year, but they went from being every year that team was top 3 under Bickerstaff. It was like top 3, top 3, top 3. Last year, you could tell that they were like, holy crap, we have so many weapons. Let's just play free and clear, and we're going to kill these teams. But their defense slid. It slid 12th, and they like flirted with the top 10 ranking here and there, but they were not an elite level defense. This is always the trouble, is being a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense is so difficult, not only because of how good you have to be and how healthy you have to be, but you also have to manage. It has to almost become this circular system of get, stop, run, easy bucket, set defense, get, stop, repeat. And like, you can do it, but that's the only way for you to really manage your energy, because otherwise you're just like dog tired, and that's going to affect your lift on your jump shot and stuff like that. One bet that's kind of percolating that we want to talk about is, okay, if the Magic are going to make this huge leap, and we've seen guys like Cade Cunningham get very close on most improved player, and have these kind of pushes that have happened consistently. And we've seen Ja Morant win most improved. And we've seen these guys win most improved. Is there a chance that Paolo Banchero could be most improved player? Bryan, Fonseca, I'll ask you, like, does that have any weight to you as far as whether or not Paolo could be the guy to showcase himself next year for that award?
I think the issue I have with it, other than the fact that, because I'll reiterate this every time, I don't think if you were a number 1 or top 5 pick, you should be qualified to get most improved player, save for special circumstances like you're Victor Oladipo and you've moved around the league and then made a jump. That to the side. Paolo Banchero, like, what numbers does he have to have, I guess would be my question, because he's already at 26, 8, and 5 last year, roughly. Does he have to get to 30, 10, and 6 or something along those lines? Does Orlando have to be a top 2 team in the Eastern Conference? I don't know if we're getting an award from these guys necessarily. I think some people will flirt with, hey, could I bet Paolo for MVP, where it's more likely he winds up on a ballot than anything else. The MVP ticket out on the market is like plus 10,000 right now, if you're really that interested. But to me, it's like, I don't know how much more he could jump just from a numerical perspective is why I would hesitate on that. I also looked at Franz Wagner for that just to see if there's more there. And I couldn't quite get there because I still have questions about the jumper, having seen him in Eurobasket just not that long ago extensively. And there's still some questions I have there in terms of how that's going to work. But I think Desmond Bane is going to help a lot, because where Franz Wagner, like, the jumper is still shoddy. And Desmond Bane is going to help both Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner, I think, immensely. Like it's a beautiful fit. Me and Kravitz actually talked about this after it happened, and I was like, this is the perfect guy for them to get. I think from a stylistic standpoint and how he's gonna fit here, I think better than he fit with John Morant and with Jaren Jackson Jr. But in terms of awards, I don't know what this is leading to. I think you can produce multiple All-Stars in Orlando. And I think if I'm looking at futures, I would look at more team-centric things. Do you think they can win the NBA title? Do you think they could win the East? If you want to wait till they get to the playoffs and go series by series, because I do think they could be a team, to Brandon's point, that gets into the Final Four. But in terms of individual awards, I'm struggling with that a little bit right now.
Bryan, do you think that that Wagner's jumper, like, do you see something mechanical that's the concern for you there, or was it more just like, look, he's never been able to get this jumper to fall consistently, and it didn't look good. It didn't fall in Eurobasket either.
So it's weird. Like overseas, you're not seeing it. His last couple years in Orlando, you haven't seen it. Now, he actually came into the league and he was a pretty decent 3-point shooter, different role. And now that more has been asked of him for whatever reason, he's been under 30% the last couple of years. And I actually remember him coming out of the draft, but the jumper was a question mark there too, even when he was at Michigan. So I don't know if it's form. I don't know if it's mechanical. It might be, but I do think he is taking tougher shots now. This is part of it. I think Brandon would attest to this too, because he has to be one of the guys on this team. Like, you're not just going to get, spot up 3-point shots in the corner anymore. Sometimes you're going to have to take them off the dribble. And this is where, again, I think Desmond Bane will help, because you have to guard him at the perimeter now. And this is something they didn't have. Like, even if Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was a 40% 3-point shooter last year, there wasn't really a threat that he was going to drive to the basket. Desmond Bane could actually be a threat to drive to the basket if you do overplay him in the perimeter. So I just, with Franz Wagner, like, that's something that does have to fix itself, because I don't know if you can be in Orlando, even with Desmond Bane there, in a situation where Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner are noticeably below average 3-point shooters.
BK, do you feel like they have the supporting guys to get this done? Suggs apparently is, quote, aiming. Their target on Jalen Suggs is opening night, which is good to hear. But the fact that it's even still in question makes me nervous. I don't even know if I can say that you should invest in this team unless we know that Suggs is going to be healthy. I think he's that important. Like, Dez, I think, probably helps a ton. I love that 4-man combo. And honestly, people probably sleep a little bit on how good Wendell Carter Jr., who I found out this week they refer to as Dell. You know this? That's his thing. I always think it's funny because the nicknames for guys on teams is always different from what you would expect, right? Because, like, I've always just called him like WCJ, right? Or, like you would expect like CJ or something, Instead, it's like, no. Like, Dell. That's his name, is Dell. Dell, I think, is probably a little bit underrated on that team. Do you feel like Anthony Black or De Silva
for me,
any of these guys can make a pop to help them out and give them one more guy who can actually give them just a couple buckets a night?
Yeah, I think for me, it's Anthony Black. We've seen him when he gets aggressive and really tries to play bully ball, because he doesn't have an outside shot either. Shocker. The Magic obviously have a type. And I mean, last year,
Tristan
I was
De Silva
thinking
could help though, BK. Tristan De Silva could help.
He can. He honestly, if you were to rank, just forget about percentages, the most confident shooters on the team, they get the ball, it flies, the form looks good. Tristan De Silva is top 3, easy, maybe even higher than that. I was thinking about this today as I'm driving around. These are the thoughts we have when we drive around town. Paolo driving to the bucket, looking around, going, okay, I'm getting a double team, sometimes triple team. So the smart basketball plays, Paolo's a smart player. I'm going to kick out to the open guy. And how many times throughout the year would he go, not that dude, not passing to him. Let me look behind me. Nope, he can't shoot. Wendell Carter Jr. can actually stroke it. It's all mental with him. He was broken last year. No confidence. He would have a wide open 3 at the top of the key, would pump fake air, and then drive to the basket. So it was, you said systemic. That's absolutely true. And that's why changing portions of the coaching staff was important. Anthony Black, for me, is one of those guys. I think if he starts to understand who he is a little bit more, they don't all have to be threes. You got 3-point shooters now, a couple of them. Even if they threw Jace Richardson in there, they drafted, he can shoot a three. Tristan DeSilva. But Anthony Black plays the requisite defense that this team needs to they still need to maintain that identity. If they're going to be as good as we think they can be, it has to start there. And I don't think they need to push top 10 on offense. I mean, they ranked into the 20s last year. They just need to be top 15 on offense and still maintain top 5 defense. And I think they can be an elite team that way. But for me, it's Jalen Suggs. If we're looking at most improved player this year, he's 70-1. That's a market that I can buy into. Had he not gotten hurt last year, I think he would have been in the discussion. He ups the 3-point percentage. He shot over 39% 2 years ago. The defense doesn't slide. And I mean, if he plays a more traditional point guard, which is kind of the role they have carved out for him right now, even though it doesn't fit perfectly with who he is, but we could see the assist numbers jump. That's the kind of guy that I think could win an award in terms of most improved.
So I actually have some numbers on this. I ran a whole analysis this summer because if I'm going to talk about, hey, you've got to be a top 3 seed in the NBA if you want to win the NBA title, which historically that's true. Only 2 teams in the last 35 years have won the title as more. I'm sorry, only 2 teams in NBA history. That's incorrect. As more than a 3 seed. We have 2 instances in NBA history of them winning the title as more than a 2 seed. So or more than a 3 seed. So you got to be top 3. So I decided to split this out, and I looked at the last 10 seasons, all of the 3 seeds in each conference, and I want to get a sense for what you needed to do in each conference, because in the Western Conference, the bar is just a lot higher, right? And what's interesting is if you want to be an elite team, if you want to win 60-plus games, even in the Eastern Conference, you need to be the average on offense is 3.7. That's how good you've got to be. You got to be. That's the defense is high too. But I think if you're the Magic, you're not looking to be the 1 seed. You're not looking to be a juggernaut. You're looking for, can we win 50 games and be a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference, which would historically give us at least a good chance of not only making a Final Four, but once you're in the Final Four, you've got. To me, it's like we should talk about that so much more, because then you are within range of the title. If you make it to the last 4 teams, you got to beat 2 squads. That's close enough to me.
Which is why at plus 550, I feel like that's a bet that I have to make. I already did. It's in the app. I think the East is a 3-headed monster. Cavs, Knicks, Magic are clearly a tier above everybody else right now, in my opinion. And I don't think there's a lot of separation there. The Cavs kind of peaked last year. They haven't proven they can stay healthy in the playoffs. Talk about a team that peaked. I mean, that Knicks playoff run was as hot could be, and they still couldn't get to the finals. The Magic aren't quite where those teams are in terms of what we've already seen, but they're on the ascent. And if we're trying to make bets, we're trying to beat the market. And at plus 5, if we get to the conference finals, are the Magic going to be plus 550 against anybody? Probably not. So I think that feels like a bet that, I mean, I'm an Orlando guy, so, take that for what it's worth. But I feel like it's a smart bet to make at this point in the season.
So the number for 50-plus wins the last 10 seasons in the Eastern Conference, if you're going to win 50-plus games and be a top 3 seed, your average offensive finish is only 6.6. Like you said, they don't have to be a top 5 offense. If they sniff the top 10 with how good their defense is, if that defense is sticky, which is an if, then that matters. But here's like the funny one. The minimum. I looked at what's the lowest offensive performance for a team in the Eastern Conference that won 50 games and landed a top 3 seed in the last 10 years. There was a team that was 18th in offense and still made 50-plus wins, top 3 seed. So if you think about it this way, it starts to make sense, because I think in the Western Conference, it's the opposite only for defense. If you remember, the Denver Nuggets won the title with the 18th ranked defense in the NBA in 2023 for the regular season. Like, you can just get away with it. So that to me is like a reasonable case here. That said, I don't want to bet the Magic for the division. I am not so much in on the Magic to win the division because I think the number is too heavy, and I'm always looking for value early on division market futures. Which is why we will turn now to the one that Bryan Fonseca can't put away, the sweet nectar that he cannot avoid, that he is drawn to, not like a moth to a flame, but like a hornet to some sort of object. Probably a hornet to a sweet soul that is just sitting there, because hornets are actually... It's funny, I love the hornets. I had a hornet starter jacket, and I hate wasps. Hate hornets. Hate those things. They are the devil.
Please tell me it's the 90s throwback, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Remember when the murder hornets were supposed to murder us all?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I'm glad that didn't happen. Anyway.
We wouldn't be doing this podcast right now, I'll tell you that.
Brian.
Yes.
You're back
Speaking of murder hornets.
Brian, you're back in on the murder hornets? You're back in?
They're better this year on paper. I mean, look, so I'm going to go with the theory that we established last year, which is I was a year early. And damn it, I think I'm going to get this one this time. So last year, their over-under in terms of win total was 29.5, 28.5. And honestly, we were looking pretty good for the first month. You know, only 2 games under 500, competitive, couple of surprising wins, and then Brandon Miller was hurt immediately. LaMelo Ball got hurt. Trey Mann, who was playing decently, got hurt. Grant Williams tore his ACL. Like, they had an insane run of injuries. But I think, and I think you agree with this, Matt, I think they have the right coach. I do think this time, it's not Steve Clifford. I kind of like James Borrego. But I think this time with Charles Lee, you have the right guy in place who can basically lead a rebuild, if we're still calling it that. Now, this is still a health bet ultimately, but 25.5 wins. I took the over. I sprinkled on 30 plus, which on DraftKings is plus 190. And I also sprinkled on at plus, it was either 800 or 900, it's in the app, to make the play-in. You know, because it's the Eastern Conference, and I think this is if there's a year that's not going to be just chalky when it comes to all the teams that are going to make the playoffs and the play-in, like there's going to be a couple surprises. I can't tell you confidently that the Bulls are definitively going to be better than the Hornets this year. I don't know that. You know, like in looking at this team too, it's like LaMelo Ball. If it's not now, I don't know when it's going to happen in terms of putting a full season together, leading a team to be respectable. It looked like we were on track to get that early on in his career when the Hornets made it to the play-in, but it's tailed off, and a lot of it's due to his injuries. I think Brandon Miller is legitimately an all-star wing waiting to happen. I don't know if it's this year, but I do think it can be this year. Now he's entering his 3rd season, and with these guys who are 6'8", 6'9", who can score, curious about what he's going to be on the defensive end, you know, as he progresses as well. But I think this is legitimately a team that has maybe 2 all-stars on its roster. I don't think they're both going to be all-stars this year, because then that would mean the team is doing really well. But in the future, and I like some of the role players, like Trey Mann, like I mentioned, was an interesting player last year. We'll see what he does this year over a full season. Colin Sexton's a veteran who, look, he scores and he's really efficient, and he's not like he's kind of a punchline for some people, but he's somebody who can get you 18 a game, won't kill you, can compete on the defensive end. He's not going to be a lockdown defender, but like, he's a solid role player you can have playing alongside these guys. I don't know what to expect out of Spencer Dinwiddie, but he's a veteran point guard that I trust in a point guard room that has some talent in it. And then aside from that, the wings, we mentioned Brandon Miller already. Josh Green, I'm intrigued by, because I think he's sort of a complimentary guy that can play with high usage guys if he can just knock down threes consistently and defend. Don't know what to expect from TJ, from Grant Williams this year. He's still recovering. We'll see what happens. And then Miles Bridges, you kind of always forget he's there. Don't know if they're going to try to trade him, turn that into something. I have no idea. We've talked about whether or not he should be in the league, you know, on different occasions. And at center is where I'm terrified. But I really like Moussa Diabate. I just don't know if you have enough there otherwise. But Mason Plumlee is a stabilizing vet. And I think this is a team that can get 30-something wins if they're at least on the right side of the health luck this year. You have the coach. You have enough talent. I think they could be very scrappy. I think they can get some surprising wins. They just have to be mostly healthy this time.
Yeah, I feel like I'm too low on them. So I gave them, a 1-point bump for internal development, which, as we're doing this, I'm going to go ahead and bump that to 2, because like Brandon Miller getting back probably is worth a point. And internal
development, 27 games last year or something like that.
But the problem is, like, I do all of that, Bryan. Like, give him a 2-point bump. I give him adjustments. That's beyond the adjustments for adding Colin Sexton, who is a plus player. All of these types of things. I still only get them to 23.4 wins. And that's like a numbers thing, right? Where you kind of have to be like, look, you have to remove last year. You have to, fundamentally wipe out last year, where their numbers wound up for me. Their power rating was minus 10.6 points worse than an average team, which sounds about right. Like, they should lose by double digits to an average team on neutral court. The problem is, like, even if you're like, okay, the tanking took up a lot of that, and I'm still trying to figure out a good way to kind of quantify how much I should remove on a power rating for the teams that tank. My guesstimate is somewhere between 3 and 4 points. So basically, like, you should just give them a 4-point bump when they're trying to compete versus at the end of the season when they're not. It just, the bar is like, they are starting from such a low position here. And I still kind of have the question of, if we go top down, because I think coaches bottom up, star players top down. I think there is a fundamental question of, LaMelo's, when he played last year, really was like, his APM was insane. His advanced metrics were so good last year. But there has got to be a question of, can you win with this guy? Like, is LaMelo Ball as your number one? And like, that leads to another question, which is, even if Brandon Miller, because I thought that where they were headed was like Brandon Miller was going to be the guy, and then LaMelo could shift to the number 2. And I really like LaMelo Ball as like a number 2 weapon. Like, I love that idea. I really love the idea. If LaMelo got traded to somewhere where it's like he's the number 2, I would be like, that's perfect. I think he could thrive there. But as a number 1, I think fundamentally top down, all of your decision-making traits and all of your, like, winning attitude and all of those intangible things that I obsess over, I think are compromised. So I do kind of wonder just if the bar is still so high for them in order to be able to feel like this is a good value for them to make a jump to 30 wins. I don't mind playing the over on the win total. What's the win total at currently?
25.5.
25. Like,
also, I forgot to mention also their rookies. I really like what they did in the draft. Like, I actually think, so if we're talking about building around LaMelo and Brandon Miller, which, look, I don't know if it's going to work, but Knipple is actually the type of dude, which is who they got in the top 5, that I think is going to be a high-level complementary role player, at least at his ceiling. It's funny, not to make this about the Magic, but when you did mention LaMelo as a number 2, I in my head was like, what if there was like a Franz Wagner package that when LaMelo Ball went to Orlando? And then I was like, wait, no, that's a little too ridiculous, but it's interesting.
They would never. Let me tell you that. Would never. But you have your top guy, to Matt's point.
Brenner, like, this team, I think could get that over at least.
Your top guy has to be a willing defender. It's the argument against Luka, but Luka he's on a different planet, so you can kind of get by with that. LaMelo, and then LaMelo is also never available. I mean, you look at the last couple of years.
Yeah.
47, 22, 36 is how many games he's giving you. So when he's out on the court, he's not a winning player. He does not play good defense. He's just not a serious person. And that is where I do like what they did in terms of filling the gaps around him. Knipple, Liam McNeely, like they're trying to get guys that are serious hoopers. And to me, I can't touch a season-long anything on them, but I'm going to be on their overs consistently throughout the course of the season. They ranked 24th in defensive rating last year. I don't see that getting much better. And they have a bunch of guys that can go get buckets. You get Brandon Miller back, as you guys have talked about. They're going to have no problem scoring the basketball. But they're not stopping anybody.
Could I ask you this, Matt?
Yeah.
Do you think this is kind of because we're probably going to talk about them too. Do you think this is kind of a junior version of the Hawks situation with LaMelo Ball specifically? Because we're looking at Trae Young as like, hey, you have a team around you that's pretty good. And it's a little different contractually. You're entering the last year of your deal. Like, you kind of have to prove it now. With LaMelo Ball, he still has 3 years left after the season contractually. But is this a year where, hey, you do have something around you now? It's not amazing, but given what Charlotte typically does, it's better than what they've had, and it's youthful and all these different things. Can you kind of make this work or make it improve enough? Otherwise, we'll look to maybe build around Brandon Miller and ship you off and go in a different direction.
Yeah, if he's healthy and he doesn't make an all-star team, I think he's gone next year. I think, to be honest with you, the sense I've gotten from people that are in, I'll put it this way, people that are in proximity to Charlotte, the sense I've really gotten is they wanted to turn over a new leaf. New ownership wanted to take a real new direction. New ownership wanted to install a better culture, and they're doing that. Like, to your point about Charles Lee, like, I think he's doing the right things. And if you notice, like, they're slowly getting rid of the knuckleheads. But my problem is they really kind of found that they couldn't do as much as they wanted to. They couldn't turn Miles Bridges into anything. They couldn't swap him out and move on from him. So they had to retain him. They couldn't do a sign and trade, and they couldn't sign anybody else. So they just brought him back on this big money deal. It's not good for chemistry. Like, it's just not good for your, it's not good. Like, Bridges is a very productive player. Like, he is a good NBA player. I do not feel he should be in the league.
Yeah. Descending contract too. Just want to throw that out there.
Do what?
He has descending contract too. 25 and then 23 last year. The next year is expiring.
And I think with LaMelo, I think there was kind of an idea of like, hey, if Brandon Miller can take the lead, maybe we can do something with LaMelo. And instead, like, LaMelo kind of came in and was still way better, and then Brandon got hurt. And so this is still very much like LaMelo's team. And I don't think that, like, those two people are not the same. Like, LaMelo Ball has never done anything like Bridges did, right? I continue to kind of be like, I want to see LaMelo resist shooting bad shots.
Yeah.
And I used to do a show with the host of Locked On Hornets, Doug Branson, and Doug was always like, look at who he's out there with. That's why he takes those. And my problem with that is I'm always like, see, but that's the problem, is you want a guy that takes the right shot no matter how bad it is, because it's the right shot, that looks for the right play. And if the teammate can't make it, them's the breaks. But you do the right thing anyway, because that's process. You don't just be like, well, you all suck, so I'm going to jack up this 35-foot three. That doesn't help you. Like, that doesn't help you. That doesn't help your team. That doesn't help your coach. That doesn't help your defense. None of that benefits. No matter how frustrated you are, even if it's like a higher percentage shot based off of the talent of your teammates, it's still bad process. And those are the kind of things I really pay attention to. So I can't get with you, but I will keep an eye on them in preseason, because I agree with you that the talent is there for them to be able to put something together. And I do like the coach a lot. I want to talk about my favorite team in this division. The Miami Heat at DraftKings are 18-1 to win this division. Now, I think that the Orlando Magic are going to win this division, but as always, we talk about value. I have the Orlando Magic currently projected for 51 wins, which I think is a very good, like, I'm very happy with that projection. Like, when I saw my numbers spit that out, that's one where I breathe a sigh of relief and go, okay, it did what I wanted to do. 50.7 is like, that's a great number for me for the Orlando Magic, with all of the, like, that balances. Their upside is probably 56. Their downside is probably like 47. I have the Miami Heat, though, at 47 wins, which is
Really?
well within range.
How are they winning 10 more games than last year?
Okay.
Well, there are basketball reasons for that, actually.
I want to know them.
Yeah,
I don't know
so
if I'm there, but there's reasons.
Here's the thought process. Now, this is I haven't done the adjustment for Tyler Hero, which is going to be a pretty significant one.
Maybe.
I want to. The biggest thing for me, if let's remove because like the numbers aren't going to factor this in, but this is a big deal for me as far as liking them. They are what I would refer to as a fresh air team. Last year was such a year from hell. These situations, like Jimmy's, are miserable to play with. You are getting asked by media every single day about Jimmy. You're aware all the time. Like when there's that tension, it hangs over the locker room. And guys are like, if Jimmy's going to get traded, am I going to get traded? Fuck. Am I going to wind up in wherever? Like, am I going to wind up somewhere that I don't want to be? Am I going to wind up in Charlotte on a losing team? Am I going to wind up in Memphis? Am I going to wind up in, oh my God, am I going to wind up in Utah? Right? And it infects the entire locker room. I think Bam in particular, I think struggled with this. He needed to respond better. That's on Bam. I think Bam is a player that responds well to upward momentum and responds negatively to downward momentum. I think when things get tough, Bam's game gets harder. And when things go well, Bam's game gets easier. He's a facilitator. He's a connector. He makes everybody better. So just having the situation of we don't have to deal with all this drama. Jimmy's gone. That's over with. Fresh start. We're here. We're locked in. We know what we're doing. Norman Powell is really good, man. I'm terrified of the extension that they're going to give him. But when you look at, especially with this Tyler injury, Norm's, if you tell me like, hey, you need an approximate replacement for Tyler Hero's shot creation and scoring. And you were like, Norman Powell is among your lists for guys that you could get without taking up a huge chunk of your salary cap. I'd be like, yeah, that's a really good replacement for Tyler Hero, just from a scoring perspective. This is also very much not a Rorschach test. It's definitely a do you believe it test on Davion Mitchell. I believe it. Because I've seen guys be in this situation before where they get the right coach in the right situation and it just clicks. And when I watched Davion Mitchell last year, it clicked and it looked awesome and I'm bought in. I think Spoelstra is going to very much take this personally this year as I think they were still trying to kind of like transition from the team that made the one seed in 2022 and made the finals in 2023. And now it's like, no, this is a new thing. You got Khalil Ware. And even though like I'm not a Nikola Jovic guy, I still am kind of like, what does he do? Like it's cool. He shot some threes against whatever. Like I'm not even gonna make it. I'm not. Yeah, Estonia. Like that. Like that was who he was killing in Eurobasket. But when I look at this at coaching, roster, expectations, I really think that this team is set to have a bounce back season in a very big way. Spo is still Spo. Like, he hasn't lost his edge to me. And I think that this is a bounce back season for Bam. I think it's going to be a good season for Davion Mitchell. I believe in Khalil Ware. I really like those two big combinations. I think that's where the league is going. So I am going to bet a little bit on the Miami Heat at 18-1 to win the Southeast Division. That's my case for the Heat.
I'm going to put this.
You're making a face at me.
I'm going to put this in the 5 Reasons Discord once we get off this.
Do it.
You have a lot of fans in there, Matt.
I don't know. I think because they're the Heat, we expect that if we get to the middle of the season, they're going to make some big splash and it makes everything marketably better. I think this team might be going in the other direction for once, where they look around. There's no way they can look at this roster and say, this is competitive. And are we sure that they're not going to start selling pieces in order to prepare for the next phase? I know that that's not what the Heat do, but it's what they need to do. And even if they don't, this is a bunch of spare parts that if anybody can get the most out of it, it's Erik Spoelstra. I respect the man to the nth degree, but I just don't look at this roster and say that this is one that's going to do anything remarkable. They need breakouts from multiple players, and that's asking a lot.
I think there's fairness to what you're saying. This is a front office that will try to have their cake and eat it too. Like, this is a front office who very much is like, hey, we kind of know what y'all are saying, but we actually still think we could be pretty good. And at the same time, it wouldn't surprise me if, because here's the thing, ultimately, they're not a team that's going to sell unless shit is really bad. Like, if they're around 500 at the deadline, which is obviously very possible, I don't know if they're going to be selling off guys unless somebody is, like, let's say Nikola Jovic is playing really well and trading Andrew Wiggins could actually free up more time for Jovic, for potentially others. Same with moving Simone Fontecchio, who's on an expiring contract. Things like that I think could actually help them. But I think, to Matt's point, Eric Spoelstra, I don't think has been that good these last 2 years, basically since the finals. No. I think Rick Carlisle has taken over as the best coach in the NBA, basically, since then. And I think Eric Spoelstra this year, like, this is the type of roster. I mean, he's obviously great with elite players. We've seen it time and again in his career. But this is also the type of roster that a coach like him, and he's done this before, gets a lot out of that you don't expect. So after going back and forth on them a lot this summer, and speaking of being scared of extensions, the Tyler Hero one, that might be taken out of their hands now, but we'll see. The extension deadline still hasn't come. Tyler Hero is not going to be there for the first 8 to 12 weeks. He says it could only be 6. I think it might be 12. Who knows? Because I don't think they're going to try to rush him back. If it's 8 weeks, it's going to be mid-November. If it's 12 weeks, you're looking at almost Christmas at that point. And that gives you time to see a lot of different things on this roster. I think Spo is going to be very experimental. I think, to your point, Matt, Bam, he's due for a bounce back year. This is actually the first offseason he's had in a while, like normal offseason, because last year he was in Team USA. In 2023, they went to the finals. So shorter offseason than normal. Still had an offseason, but shorter offseason than normal. 2022, they were the 1 seed. 21 was in the Olympics. 2020 was the bubble. Like, this is his first full offseason, like full offseason since before COVID, essentially. And I do think there could be something to that. And the players that they have around, like Norman Powell, you mentioned it, in terms of a complementary piece for what Bam does specifically on offense, I think that's as good as you can do. And to Brandon's point now, this is where it could get a little shaky. You do need a couple guys to break out. Jaime Jaquez was not good last year. Jaime Jaquez was quite bad last year. He was quite good the year before. He was quite bad last year. If he can't shoot threes well, consistently, he might not be like a functional role player, and he might be somebody that they have to move on from, because that's the one thing that's probably keeping him away from being very good. Nikola Jovic, I'm very much in on, as you know. I was in on him pre-draft. I was in on him when he was in Serbia, before in like the Adriatic League. I thought he was going to be really good. And I think if he's healthy, they're going to trust him, or they're going to hopefully trust him this year, because they've been messing around with his role. Sometimes he has the ball. Sometimes he's a spot up guy. Sometimes he's a backup 5. Sometimes he's in the corner. I think this year they understand that he needs the ball more, especially with Tyler Hero out the first bit of the season.
I don't think they've been messing with him. I don't think he's earned, like, he hasn't done what he needs to get those minutes. Like, he just hasn't.
I disagree. I just,
like, everybody, all the Heat fans, not all the Heat fans, the Heat fans that are in on Jovic want him to have like all this room, where it's like there are long stretches where Jovic, he is a whisper. Like, he is nothing. He's just not even there.
Can I give you a player comp for him?
Yeah,
actually, one that Brandon could appreciate. I think he could be Hedo Turkoglu. That's that. Like, it's not an outrageous. Like, I'm not like,
it's not crazy. That's pretty good.
Yeah, like, I'm not like, oh, he's going to be, a superstar role player, whatever. I think he's a guy, like, maybe at his best, he's, third guy on a really, really good team, something along those lines, who can score in the high teens, who can make plays for others, rebound a little bit, but he has a fun game. Look, and to mention Eurobasket, one of the things, and this is a small thing, but like Eric Spoelstra was very in on him. Like, I want to see how he deals with this experience playing for Coach Pesic, who's a legend in Serbia, who led them to, multiple medals and all these different things. And Nikola Jovic, He played really well against bad teams. He struggled against the good teams until they played Finland. And then it was just him and Nikola Jokic doing everything. And all their role players were bad that game, and that's why they lost. But he held up his end against a good team that ended up making it to a medal game that had Lauri Markkanen and Mika Murinen, who's now leaving high school in the States to go play overseas in Serbia. And he's going to be a lottery pick someday. Like, so he did that. He's obviously had more experiences in like the World Cup a couple years ago, the Olympics last year. I think he can be, with Tyler Hero out, like you can look at him and be like, okay, this is a top 3-4 guy on this team. If he takes advantage of the opportunity presented to him, he might start. So we'll see. Maybe.
To wrap up here, we'll just talk real quickly about the Hawks and the Wizards, because one of the things you're going to find on buckets is like I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the teams that we're not betting on. The Wizards, I will roll through this very quickly for you. I still think there's value on the over on the win total. That is all. They are going to be bad. They're going to be a bottom 8 team. I can't get past. I'm doing the exact same thing I did with the Detroit last year, where it's like I was in on Detroit to be way better, but I was like, but come on, they're not going to be like good. And then the Pistons were great. But with the Wizards, the pick thing I can't get around. They have to be bottom 5 to ensure they don't lose the pick. They have to be one of the 5 worst teams in the NBA record-wise to ensure they don't lose their pick. Now, you can be the 5th worst team in the NBA with 26 wins, and we breeze past this. We breeze past their over. I like a lot of the upper momentum of the Wizards. I'm going to be watching them a lot. I'm going to be betting on them to cover the spread. There's all these things. But I can't sit here and be like, hey, you should be like jumping on. This is like the long shot, blah, 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 blah. I can't do that when there's these definite restrictions. I still like a lot of what I heard at Media Day. I really like what I'm hearing from the front office as far as their direction. Sar added muscle, which is the biggest thing, is that they told Sar, you got to get in the weight room because we got to rebound. They're going to try and be a defensive team that runs. I think that's great for their roster.
Agreed.
Trey Johnson was the guy that every single Wizard was like, that dude's a maniac. And I'm very excited because everybody was, they literally, like CJ was talking about this and the front office did too. They are trying to get him to find hobbies because they can't get him out of the gym.
Yes.
Love that.
Like, he's going to overtrain because he loves basketball so much. And he was like I'm in, but I got to be reasonable about this. And I can't sit here and be like, hey, I think this team can win 30, 35 games. And if we don't have I battled with this where it's like, I feel so confident in the floor of Washington being higher than their win total. But I cannot get past the realities that their ceiling by necessity has to be low. Like if they win 30 games, they're probably losing their pick, and they cannot afford that. And if there's no ceiling to a team, I can't justify giving that out as a win total. I just can't. I hate it because I love that. I really think if they were just like, if Trey was as good as I think he can be, and they were just like, screw it, we're just gonna go. We lose the pick, but we got to build culture here. I would respect it, but there is this idea of just like you can't give up. So, like, fine. I don't personally find that the 7th or 6th pick is going to be transformational for you, but fine, I get it. Maybe it can be. Those guys can always be all-stars. I get it. So I'm backing off on the Wizards.
Can I give my favorite Wizards bet real quick?
Yeah.
You mentioned Alex Sarr. This one's in the app as well. 60-1, most improved player. We've talked about that award. He's my favorite personally among the longer shots to win this. If they're going defense, I mean, that fits him perfectly. That's where he thrives. And his offense came around. He averaged 16 a night after the All-Star game. Now he's got veterans around him. I just think anybody who gets to beat up on the East routinely has a chance to win this award. I know, Fonseca, that he does not fit your criteria because this was a top pick, but I think we could see a big leap from him this year. That number is sort of outrageous to me.
My criteria doesn't matter because the voters are going to vote for whoever. And I like Alex Sarr, so this is what it is.
Yeah. Finally, the Hawks. I'm real close to betting the under.
Really?
Yeah, I'm real close. I think everyone is missing a lot of what. So the win total is 47.5, 46.5, 47.5 in the market. And the defense had Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson for half of the year, Onyeka Okongwu, Quinn Snyder as your lead kind of organizer. And it was still terrible. Like they were a bad defense. Porzingis said he's over whatever that illness was, but still doesn't know what it was. I am part of this is there is just this thing with me. If the Miami Heat let go of a player who's healthy, it probably means that you should be very wary of what that player is going to be for you. Max Strus has been pretty good for the Cavs. Pretty good. And Gabe Vincent has been fine. But like in general, you should be very, very worried when the Heat let go of somebody. The Celtics, on the other hand, when they let go of a guy that has injury or age issues, you should absolutely have red flags all over the place. They let guys go when they have used them up. And that's not just Isaiah Thomas. That's Marcus Smart. There are other guys that when they are done with them, they're like those guys do not recover. Those guys are never the same after Boston lets them go. And Kristaps Porzingis with his injury history, that is a giant red flag for me. And so if something happens and Porzingis is only available for less than 40 games, and Onyeka Okongwu, who I love and is a dog, is only available as your like real only serious big there, I get really worried. Trey is unhappy. Like he was pretty honest about that on media day, about like not being thrilled with the fact that they're not forthcoming with the extension. That's bad for the locker room. When guys are worried about getting paid, they're not worried about winning. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a great addition. Do not get me wrong. Great 3-and-D player. Excellent. Nickeil is awesome. But Nickeil is awesome in that way of like, you know who's really good? He's not like, oh, obviously Nickeil Alexander-Walker is like an elite player. He's not that. And so making this jump. The other thing is, have you guys looked at Jalen Johnson's actual shooting numbers last year? Because I love the way that Jalen played. And I was all in on him. I was like, this guy could be like the next like great player on the Hawks. And then I actually looked at his numbers. That dude shot 36% from mid-range, 20th percentile, and 31% from three. Now, he was 69% at the rim. He's like a forward. But so much of it was just in transition. You cannot make a meal out of Jalen Johnson offense right now. So when I factor all this in and how good this division, I think we talked about, could be, how much more competitive it can be, the only thing holding me back from the under is just like, hey, Quinn Snyder's a really good coach and the roster is more complete now. It's just like a more complete roster. So that's got me a little bit reserved. Let's go to BK for his surprise and then, or for his thoughts, and then we'll get to Fonseca.
I'm with you on this. And if you look at the juice on DraftKings, that indicates that that's where money is tilting. And I think for good reason. Only 5 teams in the East had more than even 45 wins last year. And if I look at this Hawks team, yes, there's reasons to be encouraged, but they're a little overhyped. And are they as good as any of the teams that surpassed that number last year? I don't think they are. Yes, it's easier to beat teams in the East now than it has been in the past. You still have to play teams in the Western Conference. I think the Hawks, I think 47.5 is too high of a number. I'm not going to bet it just because I don't really bet preseason win totals. Anything that's less than 3-1 before the season, no thank you. I'm not letting the sports books hold my money for that long for minus 115. But that's the only way to look for me would be a Hawks under.
Fonseca?
I think this is the most talent that Trae Young has had around him, but you lay out some pretty convincing reasons why I should. So you have to look at alternatives, I think. If you're under on the Hawks, I think being over on the Heat makes sense because logically, and this is kind of how this division can break down, because ultimately I know divisions don't really matter, but all these teams are going to play each other 4 times. Like that's still a thing. and maybe 5 depending on how the NBA Cup goes. And I think with Atlanta, I buy into the talent, but they have a lot of reasons. Like, I've soured on them too for multiple different reasons, some of which you laid out. Also, I'm just worried about, like, now everyone's in on them.
Yeah.
And this was happening with the Denver Broncos before the NFL season, where it's like, all right, if they're all of a sudden the team now, you know, for everybody, I'm like, okay, I don't know if we're all quite seeing the same things here. What I was seeing before is like, all right, this is a really good team built around Trae Young, theoretically at least. But Kristaps Porzingis might be cooked. We don't know. Onyeka Okongwu, I think he's good, but he might be better in theory than he actually is when you watch him on the court. I do think there's some big time performances there that he can string together, but I wonder if he's hyped up a little bit too much by the nerds. But I like Okongwu very much still. Jalen Johnson is also theoretical because he gets hurt a lot. Like, on top of the shooting, he's another, like LaMelo Ball, he's a big time injury guy. I think he could be a future all-star too, because he does have the productivity. He's a forward in the East, but at the same time, he's an injury risk guy. And if he gets hurt, this can get really dangerous. And then with Trae Young, the contract situation, yeah, I didn't love that either. And I kind of think, look, I think Dyson Daniels is pretty good, but I do think we kind of overrated him a little bit from last year. And I wonder how much of that is he going to replicate this coming season. I didn't feel like he was Defensive Player of the Year worthy, and I think he was getting a lot of love for Most Improved Player, where I was like, this is clearly Ivica Zubac, but okay. He obviously didn't win the award, but still. And I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a good pickup. I don't know how impactful he's going to be in terms of like the win total. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how much he's actually going to swing for them. I think he's a good role player, and that's a good guy to have coming off the bench. And then you have some question marks elsewhere. I think Luke Kennard's a good fit, Vic Krejci, but like those guys aren't going to swing things in a dramatic way either. And Trae Young, not necessarily one of my favorite players in the league. I was in on this team earlier, and now I'm kind of being scared off of them. And in terms of futures, 47.5 is just very high for a team who
a lot has to go right.
Yeah, for a team, like, it's like, all right, I know this is theoretical, but I expected the number to be in the lower 40s, 42, 43.5. When I saw 47.5, I was like, you're making me want to bet the under. The only future I could convince myself of right now, other than maybe leaning toward the under because of everything we've talked about, is like an NBA Cup bet, because their group is not that good. They have the Wizards, Raptors, and Pacers in their group, and the Cavs. And it's like they're plus 210 to win their group. But I'm not going to do that because it just feels silly. But yeah, I'm a little worried about the Hawks too. And there's a world where I thought they were going to be a top 4 team in the East, but I don't know if they're easily better than the Pistons. You know what I mean? Or even the Heat for that matter.
So the Magic. So here's kind of one. If we're just like, look, the floor for the Magic is really high, and I think it is. I think the floor for the Magic is really high this season.
Mm-hmm.
The bet might be here, instead of messing with the Hawks, is you can do exact division finish 1-2 at DraftKings. The crown is yours. And Magic 1, Heat 2 is plus 750.
Wow.
So if I bet Heat 18-1 to win the division and Heat 1-2 plus 750, what I'm basically saying is I'm just parlaying. I am doing a round robin of Hornets, Wizards, Hawks are going to be 3, 4, 5 in the division in some order. That's all I'm doing. Is I'm just saying, hey, it might be Heat, it might be, it's probably Magic, but it's not Hawks, Hornets, Wizards. And I kind of like that. I'm not going to make an official bucket bet. We're going to do official bucket bet, but we're going to stay away from that one.
Do you think the Hawks defense is going to be good? I guess is my last question. Good as in like top half of the league, top 15.
They can get top half of the league, but they were 21st last year, I think, schedule adjusted over dunks and threes. And that jump that they're kind of expected to get here, to me, is crazy when they don't have real rim protection. And it's like, oh, Kristaps Porzingis. I'm like, like KP is not like this swooping pterodactyl that just like, he's not Victor, he's not, that's not what he is. Like he's an impactful defensive player. And his versatility is really good. But last year, this team was 18th in offense, 21st in defense. and I do not know what they've done to make me believe that, like, Nikhil, you can't tell me, well, they had Nikhil Alexander-Walker, so now they're going to be a top 12 defense. You're going to tell me they're going to jump 9 spots off of Nikhil Alexander-Walker? That doesn't make any sense.
Jalen Johnson has to be healthy for like.
And like Dyson will get better, but Dyson, that was the big thing with Dyson last year, is he was a great individual defender, and the team metrics he didn't make them better.
Right.
And I really do kind of wonder about that. Like, who on this team makes their defense systemically better? I think Jalen Johnson does. I think Okongwu does a little, but I'm very skeptical of them overall. Okay, that's going to do it for Buckets. Appreciate you guys being with us. Thanks for hanging out with us. We're back on Friday talking about another division. Make sure to catch the new favorites with Brandon Kravitz every Tuesday and Thursday. And you guys do the Sunday morning show? Is that right?
Sunday night. We do a Sunday night recap after the 4 o'clock games.
Yeah, make sure to check that out. Make sure to check out Bryan Fonseca's YouTube page, Bryan Fonseca NY on Twitter if you want to catch those links. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, let's get buckets.